You're listening to What She Said on Canada Talks.
I'm Christine Bentley in studio with Kate Wheeler, and joining us today is Marcello Novello, who is a paralegal with DeRose Barristers and Solicitors, a personal injury law firm that has been informing and protecting clients for close to 40 years now. Welcome, Marcello.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And today we're discussing how much of a claim you have if you maybe are at fault in an accident, or in some cases don't even have insurance.
I didn't even think you had a claim if you were
at fault.
Oh, yeah.
Well, essentially, I'd like to first give a definition of what an insured person is. So essentially, an insured person is basically the named insurer. So if I drive in a vehicle, I have my own insurance. And essentially, number two would be a spouse. And number three, essentially, any dependent of a vehicle. So if you do not have insurance, there's what's called the priority rules under the Insurance Act. So essentially, you're going to have to go through your own insurance first. And if you do not have insurance, you would have to go under, if you're in a vehicle, you would have to go under the vehicle that you are in. If you're...
what if you're driving a vehicle and you don't have insurance because you just decided not to pay for insurance?
Oh, and then if you're driving a vehicle without insurance, then there'll be fines, of course, right?
Yes, but would you get any benefits?
The benefits you would get is for accident benefits would be for your medical, but you would not be able to get anything for, let's say, income replacement benefit.
I didn't even think you would get medical. I mean, I just didn't think you would get anything if you didn't have insurance.
Now, if you're an occupant of a vehicle, an occupant being a passenger, or even if you're essentially, let's say, if you're an occupant in a vehicle, or even if you're getting in and out of a vehicle, you're still considered an occupant. And if you do not have insurance, you still will be entitled to insurance either through the vehicle you are in. If the vehicle you are in does not have insurance, therefore you can claim under the vehicle that caused the accident. Now, if that vehicle that also struck you does not have insurance, then you're entitled to what's called the Motor Vehicle Accident Claim Fund, which is a fund basically through the Financial Service Commission of Ontario, which essentially, through the Court of Appeal, they ruled that it is considered an insurer.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Okay, let's start at the beginning because this is all like you're a lawyer. You've bamboozled me. You've got all these facts and figures, right at your fingertips, which is terrific. But explain to me why they even have the term "no fault," because I don't. If somebody then is at fault and they're responsible for the accident, but they say it's like no fault, we're basically covering our own costs. Unless somebody is declared at fault, then wouldn't they be responsible for paying all the medical stuff?
Well, again, the whole premise behind the no fault is everyone's entitled to statutory accident benefits if you're involved in a motor vehicle accident. So if I cause an accident, I'm at fault, I still have benefits through my own insurer. So my own insurer will pay for my medical rehabilitation, my income replacement benefit. If I'm off work, they pay 70% of the income, 70% of your gross income. They'll pay for, again, your medical. There's also a benefit called the non-earner benefit.
So that's if you're unemployed
If you're unemployed and after 26 weeks, the insurer, there's a test you have to meet. It's you have to have a complete inability to carry on a normal life. And if you do meet that test, you will begin getting $185 per week after 26 weeks.
But that's not going to be enough for you to live on.
Oh, exactly. And again, so if you're in an accident, you're at fault. They say at fault, but essentially you still have the statutory accident benefits that you're entitled to.
So what about caregiver benefits? What about if you were so injured that you needed somebody to look after you, or you needed to be in a hospital?
Essentially, caregiving, if prior to the accident, I was caring for someone in need of care, and I was not able to continue caring for this person, then they would pay me $250 per week, plus $50 for each dependent. So if I had 3 children, they would pay $250 maximum for the first child and $50 for each additional child. But again, they changed the legislation in 2010, and this became an optional benefit where you have to buy into. And if you did not buy in it, you're only entitled to the caregiving benefit if you sustained a catastrophic impairment.
So that's the thing that you were going to look into with your insurer because you weren't sure that you had any kind of benefits like that.
Yes, I mean, and there's also attendant care benefits, which again, there's a distinction here between being injured and catastrophic.
Correct.
But attendant care benefits are enough. Well, what is it? How much is it a month?
The attendant care benefit you're entitled to if you need, it's more for your personal care.
Right.
So what happens is an occupational therapist will come to your home.
Okay.
They'll determine how much personal care you need on a monthly basis. There's a formula they come up with. And then the maximum you're entitled to for non-catastrophic injuries is $3,000 per month.
What's catastrophic?
Catastrophic is essentially a serious injury, paraplegic, disfigurement. So it's basically definitions that you have to meet the test.
And there you get more?
If it's catastrophic, it goes from 3,000, the maximum 6,000. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're catastrophic, you're going to get the maximum of 6,000. So essentially
somewhere in between.
In between, correct.
Now, one of the other things that I didn't realize that you might be able to claim for, and we certainly hope that children aren't injured, but if your child is injured and they are unable to attend school, you can actually claim for lost educational expenses. The insurer can pay up to $15,000, and that includes tuition, books, equipment, room and board. So if somebody was away at university, they would at least and they were unable to attend, to actually physically be there, they would be able to get something back for that.
Correct. So they will pay the loss of educational expenses if you're not able to continue with your schooling, and if it's been paid, they would pay up to the $15,000 back to you.
That's good.
I wonder though. I mean, these insurance companies can be tricky.
They could.
They can. So, I mean, if you can attend online, like if you can keep up with your classes online, would they say, would that? Because I mean, I know lots of people do summer courses. I
guess it would all depend on the change in your marks. If your marks are drastically reduced, you're not able to concentrate as you used to prior to the accident. A lot of claimants may sustain head injuries or mild head injuries where they have headaches. They're not able to again concentrate and study as they were prior to the accident.
You are listening to What She Said here on Sirius XM, Channel 167, and we are joined by Marcello Novello, who is from DeRose Personal Injury Lawyers, and he's bringing us up to speed on what you can and cannot claim for when it comes to being in an accident.
And one of the things I'm wondering about is, I remember when my father was hurt. Now, it wasn't a motor vehicle accident, but they lived in Ottawa, I lived in Toronto, and I would drive up every weekend to deal with things like, dealing with the accountant and dealing with hiring somebody to look after them and dealing with all those things. Is there any reimbursement for that if somebody's seriously injured?
If anything for family, for care, it's not covered under the accident benefits. It would be more if you have to go out of your way now, and if it's caring for them, it'd be part of the attendant care. But in order to claim for the attendant care, it has to be either a licensed personal support worker, or it has to be.
Well, what about visitor expenses?
The visitor expenses are covered if it's like parking, meals. If the claimant is in hospital, they'll cover again your parking, your meals, and anything to that effect.
Boy, I've never heard of anybody getting that. I think you'd need a lawyer for that one.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine an insurance company. I mean, do you find that, not fair to ask you, but whether, can you imagine putting in a claim for that?
Well, I think they are. The other
side.
So we put many claims into
really?
that.
And do they
parking
fight
expenses? No, they'll pay that. They normally don't have
That's
problems
the nickel and dime stuff.
Especially if they're in the hospital.
It's the big, $100,000 claims that they don't
Correct.
like to pay.
I mean, damage to clothing or your glasses, stuff like
that.
Yeah,
generally they don't give issues with again. You're going to the hospital to visit the claimant, and they normally don't give problems with the parking or the meals and.
Okay, so what about if you are a pedestrian or a cyclist and you're involved. So maybe it's your fault. Maybe, I mean, Lord knows I've almost hit cyclists who have, crossed over to the, when I'm making a right-hand turn, have come up the side of me because they will go from the road to the crosswalk like
Now,
that. What happens then?
If you're a cyclist and you don't, you live on your own, you don't drive, you don't have a vehicle, you're still entitled to accident benefits through the vehicle that caused the accident. Now, even though I'm at fault, I can still claim accident benefits, statutory accident benefits under your vehicle, let's say, if you were to hit me.
And what about
can
a
you
pedestrian?
imagine, Christine, if a cyclist is at fault and she hits him and then they claim on her insurance, it will be an ugly week here.
Because I'm sure my premiums will go up, right?
If you're at fault,
No. If the pedestrian.
If the pedestrian is at fault,
not the pedestrian.
Cyclist.
Sorry, the cyclist. No, whether it's a pedestrian or cyclist, and it's not your fault, then it will not. They will not increase.
So So I didn't know that there were these funds that cover those who are uninsured.
It's basically the last resort would be the motor vehicle
So
accident claim
tell us
fund.
about this fund, because I never knew it existed. Did you know, Kate?
Nope.
That there
But
was
then
this.
I've always been insured.
I've always been insured too, but I'm just saying for people who.
Yeah, no, I can't afford it, and times are tough.
Well, no, but people who are hurt by someone who isn't insured, that there is somewhere to go.
It's essentially the last resort. So if I'm in a vehicle, I'm an occupant of a vehicle that's causing an accident. If I don't drive, I cannot use. I don't have insurance, so I would have to claim under the vehicle that I'm traveling in.
Right.
If that's an uninsured vehicle,
Right.
then I can claim accident benefits under the vehicle that caused the accident, which they're called the third-party vehicle.
Right.
Let's say, for example, that vehicle is also uninsured. Then the last resort would be the motor vehicle accident claim fund.
And is there a whole, I guess, where do people go to find that?
That would have to be done, there's applications to the Financial Service Commission of Ontario.
Okay.
That would have to be completed and submitted to the commission.
Marcello, do you know, I've been asking this question a lot, and I haven't got a firm answer from anybody yet, but about these new pay-for-service rides, whether it's Uber or Lyft, how can you, and what kind of coverage do you have as a passenger when you're not actually really sure that you're with a licensed and insured driver?
Well, again, if you're saying if
they get in an accident, if Uber gets in an accident and I'm hurt,
okay,
and I'm a passenger in their car, I've hired them. I mean, a lot of them ask you to sit up front so it doesn't look like they've hired you, right?
Well,
like
yeah,
you're hired.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's a shady operation sometimes, and it worries me.
Again, as long as the vehicle is insured.
But how do you know? When you get into one of these cars, how do you know?
Well,
When you
I
get
guess
into a taxi or you get into an airport limo, you kind of know that
Correct.
they've gone through the process. But how do you know when these individual drivers that are just working on weekends or nights and to pick up a few extra dollars, how do you know you're covered, or what coverage do you have?
Well, again, if they normally have to be covered under the laws, or else they wouldn't, have their licenses and all that.
Yeah.
Especially the taxi drivers.
Oh,
and
taxis, I understand. I'm talking about
limos
the private ones, like the new ones.
So you can imagine now, anytime I get into the car with a friend, do you have insurance? Okay, well, let's take the subway.
Ask them for the slips.
Well, thank you, Marcello, for joining us today. Marcello is a paralegal with DeRose Barristers and Solicitors, a personal injury law firm with nearly 40 years of expertise in this field, and they can be found at deroselaw.ca. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.